You know, when we talk about infection control, the first thing, a thing everyone thinks of is hand hygiene.
Oh, absolutely. It's the baseline.
It's the non-negotiable step, right? It breaks that chain of transmission.
Hmm.
But if you're a healthcare professional and you're dealing with active pathogens, airborne contact, whatever, there's this whole other highly technical choreography.
That's the perfect word for it.
The proper sequence of personal protective equipment, or PPE.
And that's the key distinction, right? Hand hygiene is what you do before and after you're in that environment.
Right.
PPE is your active barrier during the exposure. And our sources, I mean, we're talking medical training, docs, crisis protocols, they all show that mastering this isn't just about knowing what to wear.
Yeah.
It's about the absolute uncompromising order of how you put it on donning, and even more critically, how you take it off doffing.
So the mission for this deep dive is really to give you a shortcut straight to that mastery. We're going to go way beyond just, wear a mask.
Way beyond. Yeah.
We're digging into the why behind the sequence. Because like you said, the sources just hammer this point home again and again. The moment of highest risk isn't always with the patient.
No, it's when the healthcare worker is interacting with their own contaminated gear.
Exactly.
That's where you interrupt transmission or fail to. We're talking airborne, droplets, direct contact. If you mess up that order, you turn your PPE from a shield into a source of self-contamination.
The sequence is the secret weapon.
It is.
Okay, so let's start with the basics, the components. When we say standard PPE stack, what are we actually talking about? What are the key items creating this impermeable envelope around the worker?
Okay, so the standard stack has 5, let's call them non-negotiable elements. And we start right at the top.
Okay.
The hairnet, which, is often overlooked.
This seems minor.
It does, but it's crucial. It protects your scalp from anything aerosolized, and it stops your hair, which is a huge contamination vehicle, from falling into a sterile field.
And then we move down to the main barrier for the body.
The impermeable gown, that's your main shell, and it has to provide full coverage.
Not just the chest.
No, we're talking from the neck all the way down to the knees, and very importantly, the arms, all the way to the wrist. The gown is what really defines the clean and dirty zones of your body.
Okay, next up is the face, which I would think is probably the most vulnerable area.
It is, and you've got a 2-layer defense there. First, you have the face mask, or an N95 if it's an airborne risk. That's for your nose and mouth.
And mucous membranes.
Exactly. Then second, you have a face shield or goggles. And their only job is to protect the conjunctiva of the eye, another major entry point for pathogens.
And then finally, the hands.
Of course, the gloves. They protect your hands, and they have to integrate with the gown to seal that whole arm zone.
I like that idea of an envelope. But, in practice, you hear about level 1 PPE being just a mask and gloves.
Right.
When you move up to level 2 and 3, it expands. What's the real functional difference that makes you jump from, say, a level 2 to a level 3? Our sources say it's just a couple of extra items.
This is a really great point. So both level 2 and level 3, they both require a gown, gloves, and a high filtration mask or respirator. The real distinction is about extending that protective zone downwards.
Downwards.
Yeah, in situations where you have a high potential for splash or spray or things just, falling with gravity.
What do you mean by that?
So level 3 makes the hairnet and shoe covers mandatory.
Ah.
If you're doing a procedure with a lot of fluids, or maybe the patient is unstable and things could get messy, contaminants dropping to the floor or splashing up, you need that full head-to-toe coverage.
So level 2 covers the trunk and face?
The essentials, yes, but level 3 completes the whole perimeter, top of the head to the bottom of the feet. It minimizes the risk that you literally track contamination out of the room on your shoes or in your hair.
That completely reframes the hairnet and shoe covers. They're not just optional extras.
Not at all. They're for sealing the final, most gravity-affected areas. They're essential for sealing the entire body environment.
Okay, so now we know the gear. Let's get into the crucial part. Donning. Putting it all on. This is where that strict sequence really matters.
It's everything. If you mess up the order, you risk contaminating a clean surface before you've even started.
So what is the required order and what's the logic behind it?
The logic is all about establishing your clean zone first. You go from the least restrictive item to the most restrictive, and you end with the barrier over your hands.
Okay, let's walk through it.
And number 1, hairnet.
Okay.
2, gown. 3, mask. 4, face shield or goggles. And last, number 5, gloves.
Okay, I have to stop you there. The gown before the mask, that seems a bit counterintuitive. The gown is so bulky, you've got ties. The mask needs such a careful fitting. Why that order?
That's a fantastic question, and it gets right to the core of aseptic technique. The gown establishes your sterile or clean field.
Okay.
It's a huge piece of material, and you're right, you kind of have to wrestle with it, get it over your arms, tie it behind your back. Now, if you put your mask on first, you risk contaminating the outside of that mask with your hands or with the gown itself while you're struggling with it. By putting the gown on first, you make sure that the next items, the mask, the eye protection, are being applied to an already established clean perimeter.
That makes total sense. The process of putting on the gown is just inherently awkward and high risk for movement.
Exactly.
So let's get into the specifics of the gown technique. How snug does it need to be?
It needs to be fully fastened, behind the neck, behind the waist. The whole goal is to eliminate gaps, and here's the key detail. It must cover your arms completely, not just to the forearm,
All the way to the wrist.
all the way to the wrist,
Yeah.
and your torso from the neck to the knees. Any exposed skin in that primary zone is a failure of the donning process, period.
Okay, moving up to the face mask. Beyond just covering your nose and mouth, what's the fitting detail we absolutely have to get right?
Snugness and security. The mask has to fit tight along the bridge of your nose. You can't have air gaps going up toward your eyes, and it must contour to your face and under your chin.
And the ties or elastic bands?
They have to be secured properly, whether it's behind your ears or your head. A poorly fitted mask is, it's functionally useless, especially for droplet or airborne protection. Air just goes around the filter.
And then the last critical step, gloves. The sources highlight a very specific technique for how they integrate with the gown that people often miss.
This is maybe the most crucial overlapping boundary. The gloves have to be pulled so that the cuffs extend over the gown where it meets the wrist.
So they can't just meet the cuff, they have to overlap.
They must create an overlap.
And what's the safety reason for that?
It's basically a physics problem. If the glove cuff just stops at the wrist, any liquid contaminant that runs down the arm of the gown.
Due to gravity or a splash?
Right. You can wick underneath the glove cuff and touch your skin. By pulling the glove over the gown, you're creating an unbroken, fluid-resistant barrier from your fingertip all the way up to your mid-forearm. Contamination flows off, not in.
That is the ultimate aha moment for the donning process. That makes so much sense.
It does.
Okay, before we move on, let's just quickly confirm. For airborne transmission, what's the one critical change?
Right. So for droplet contact, you're wearing the full suite we just talked about. Hairnet, gown, gloves, face shield, shoe covers, and a surgical mask.
A surgical mask.
Yes. If the risk becomes airborne, everything else stays the same. But that surgical mask is swapped out for an N95 mask or a higher-level respirator.
Yeah.
That's what ensures filtration of those tiny particles.
Okay, now we enter the danger zone, doffing, taking the equipment off.
Yep.
Our sources are so emphatic about this. This process carries the highest risk of self-contamination because now you are intentionally touching surfaces you know are dirty.
Absolutely. The whole sequence is designed to remove the items with the highest contamination load first, while using what's left of your PPE to handle them. You're moving from dirtiest to cleanest.
So what's the required removal sequence?
Okay, the order is 1, gloves,
Most contaminated.
by far. 2, the gown.
Okay.
3, goggles or face shield. And last, number 4, the mask.
That makes sense. The gloves have touched everything, then the gown has been exposed to the whole room. You save your face for last.
Your face is the most sensitive cluster of mucous membranes. You protect it until the very end.
Let's dive into the mechanics of glove removal. It's an incredibly precise, multi-step process.
It's the most critical manual step. The whole goal is to make sure the contaminated outer surface of the glove never, ever touches your bare skin.
So how do you do it?
You take the first glove and you peel it forward from the palm area, turning it inside out as you pull.
Okay.
Then you hold that removed, contaminated glove in your other still gloved hand.
So the dirty glove is now contained inside the other dirty glove.
Exactly. Now for the second glove, you slide your clean fingers from your now bare hand underneath the cuff at the wrist.
So you're only touching the clean inside surface.
That's the key. You're only touching the inside. Then you pull it forward over the first contaminated glove, creating this little contained bundle of waste, and dispose of both immediately in the right container.
The final bare hand never touches the outside of either glove.
Never. That's the whole point.
That really shows the finesse required. Okay, next, the gown. It's big, it's bulky.
Yes, and gravity's working against you here. Ideally, you have a colleague untie the back ties for you.
And if not?
You untie them carefully yourself. The crucial move is to pull the gown away from your shoulders and body. only touching the inside or the ties, and you must turn it inside out as you roll it up.
So the contaminated outside surface gets trapped on the inside of the bundle.
Correct. You avoid touching the front or sides of the gown, preventing that contaminated front from flapping against your clean scrubs underneath.
Okay. Eye protection. Goggles or face shield.
These are next. You handle them only by the straps or the earpieces. Lift them from the back of your head.
And the absolute rule.
To not touch the front of the goggles or face shield. Ever.
Mm.
If they're reusable, they go straight into a reprocessing container. If not, infectious waste.
Finally, the mask. This is the last barrier protecting the most sensitive area. And the removal sequence here is surprisingly detailed.
It's a perfect example of how these protocols are based on pure mechanics. If your mask has ties, you untie or remove the bottom tie or elastic first.
The bottom first. That feels completely backwards. Why?
Think about it. If you remove the top tie first, what happens?
It loses its anchor. It would just fall forward.
Exactly. Gravity takes over. And this heavily contaminated mask could drop or swing forward and contaminate your chest, your neck, even your face before you can control it. By releasing the bottom tie first, the mask stays anchored by the top tie. It gives you control. You can then gently pull it forward and away from your body without ever touching the front surface.
Wow. That one specific action, it just highlights how every single step in this choreography is designed to prevent a split second of exposure. It's not just protocol, it's physics.
It is. It's risk mitigation based on physics. And the final step after the mask's off is immediate, rigorous hand hygiene.
So we've covered the standard dance, but let's look at the real-world test case, the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic. Supply chain scarcity just forced healthcare systems to completely modify these protocols, especially in high-risk places like endoscopy suites.
You have a monumental shift. I mean,
Yeah.
standard protocols, they just assume you have enough supply for single use.
Right.
The pandemic forced us to integrate reuse and to deal with this dramatically increased cognitive load and time pressure. It was a whole new ballgame.
The first thing I noticed in the modified protocols was this radical integration of hand hygiene. It wasn't just the end, it was peppered all through the removal sequence.
They essentially built in multiple mini breaks in the contamination chain. Your standard protocol might have one or two hand hygiene steps.
Right at the beginning and end.
But this modified protocol, you were sanitizing your hands after removing the gown, after removing the first pair of gloves if you were double gloving, before leaving the room, and then again after leaving the room.
Wow.
They recognized that with all this repeated handling of contaminated items, you had to keep resetting your hands to a clean state during the process itself.
And then the most complex change was dealing with scarcity, the reuse of N95s and face shields. This added entirely new steps.
It added cleaning steps between the removal of items, which, as you can imagine, dramatically increased the mental burden on staff. For the face shield, you couldn't just take it off.
What did you have to do?
First, you had to take a germicidal wipe and disinfect the surface where you were going to place the shield. Then, when you took it off, you grabbed the elastic from the back and immediately used another wipe to disinfect the shield before you stored it for reuse.
So the worker is actively cleaning their own PPE for the next person, all while dealing with their own recent contamination. That sounds incredibly stressful.
It was. And the same thing applied to masks. N95s were like gold. So protocols sometimes had you wear a standard surgical mask over the N95.
As a disposable cover.
Exactly. So you'd remove and discard the surgical mask first. Then you'd carefully remove the N95 again, without touching the front, and store it in a dedicated container for reuse.
It just highlights the trade-off. You maintain that high level of filtration, but you complicate the doffing sequence exponentially.
You do.
And once that N95 was stored away, what protection did the worker have left?
The protocol required them to immediately put on a new, standard surgical mask and wear that until the end of their shift, unless the very next case also required an N95. The whole environment became about risk assessment and constant procedural changes. It was so much more complex than the static 5-step protocols we started with.
You know, this whole deep dive, it really shows that being well-informed about PPE isn't about memorizing a list of equipment. It's about internalizing the why behind the sequence. The mechanics, why the glove overlaps the gown, why you release the bottom mask tie first. That understanding is the real shortcut to competence.
Absolutely. And that knowledge is only functional through constant, deliberate practice. These seemingly minor steps, the direction you peel a glove, turning a gown inside out, they're not arbitrary. They are meticulously designed safety features.
They use gravity and material science to protect you from your own gear.
Precisely.
And when you think about those extreme measures during the pandemic, the flexibility, the multiple hand hygiene steps, it brings up a question that goes beyond just the simple sequence.
Hmm.
Given that protocols have to evolve under stress, the highest level of protection really relies on a system's ability to enforce these practices. So if the goal is to interrupt the chain of infection, where else in a high-stress clinical environment could simple, non-PPE behavioral corrections provide another layer of safety? I don't know, like strictly marked walking paths in a unit or enforced rest periods to combat fatigue. Could those things be just as crucial as remembering to untie the bottom mask tie first? It's something to mull over as you internalize the sequence.
Indeed. The human element is always the final variable.
Thank you for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.